Mr. Epstein and all things associated. We've been talking.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is officially a commoner after being formally stripped of his last remaining honours by the King.
Charles has officially stripped Prince Andrew of his remaining royal honors. On December 1st, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's membership.
A video just surfaced that nobody saw coming. Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew caught on camera together, and the internet absolutely lost it. Now, here's the thing. These are arguably the two most talked about royals in recent history, and not for good reasons. So, when footage drops showing them in the same room having a conversation, yeah, people have questions. Was this before Harry? After? And more importantly, why does this feel like such a big deal? Because here's where it gets wild. Sometimes one clip is all it takes to make everyone rethink everything they thought they knew about someone's story. But what we're about to reveal is gonna blow your mind. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because this gets crazy. Let's dive in. So here's what happened. Out of nowhere, this video starts making the rounds online. We're talking Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew in the same frame, having what looks like a full-on conversation. And listen, the second people caught wind of this,
it's an all-out assault on the very foundation of Meghan's carefully curated public image. At the heart of this explosion,
social media went absolutely nuclear. Hashtags started trending instantly. People were throwing out theories left and right, dissecting every single frame like they were professional detectives or something. Get this, within hours, you couldn't scroll through any platform without seeing someone talking about it. Twitter was on fire with takes, Instagram comments were flooded, and YouTube channels were already pumping out reaction videos. TikTok creators were stitching the clip with their own commentary, adding dramatic music and zooming in on facial expressions. It was everywhere. The algorithms were pushing it to everyone's feed because the engagement was off the charts. Because here's the thing, when you put these two specific royals together, it's basically content dynamite. We're not just talking about any random members of the family here. These are the two people who've dominated headlines for years, and not exactly in wholesome, feel-good ways.
To him after he served for 22 years and fought in the Falklands War, the British government says it is working to remove.
Andrew's been the subject of intense scrutiny for what feels like forever now. And Meghan, she's probably the most divisive figure to enter the royal family in modern history. People either defend her fiercely or criticize her relentlessly. There's like zero middle ground. So when footage surfaces showing them in conversation, it doesn't matter if it's 30 seconds or 3 minutes, people are gonna lose their minds. The comment sections were wild. Some were convinced this showed some hidden connection nobody knew about. Others were saying it meant absolutely nothing and everyone was overreacting. But that's the beauty of it, right? Nobody actually knows what the context is, so everyone gets to fill in the blanks with their own version of events. Nobody expected this. Like, at all. The royal family's usually pretty buttoned up about who interacts with who, especially when it comes to documented moments. They control the narrative pretty tightly, or at least they try to. But this footage, it slipped through somehow.
to die for over a decade, people start asking why. And Tom Bauer thinks he knows why. They fit a pattern.
Maybe it was sitting in someone's camera roll for years. Maybe it got released intentionally. Maybe it was just buried in an archive somewhere and somebody stumbled across it. Whatever the case, it's out there now and there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. What makes it even wilder is the timing. This isn't coming out during some quiet period where royal news is slow. The family's already dealing with constant media attention, and both Meghan and Andrew individually staying in headlines for their own reasons. So dropping this clip into that environment, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire that was already burning pretty hot. And here's where people really started spiraling. The clip itself doesn't show anything scandalous. At least not on the surface, it's just two people talking. But that's exactly why everyone's so fascinated. What were they talking about? Was this a casual run-in at some royal event, or was there more to it? Did Meghan already know Andrew before she got involved with Harry?
And the kind of laughter that hides secrets.
Everything happened because of Fergie.
In that dimly lit room, Sarah Ferguson,
Because if she did, that opens up a whole different set of questions. What really got people talking was how both of them, have been painted as outsiders in their own ways. Andrew's been on the outs with the public for years, his reputation completely tanked. Meghan's been called everything from a rule breaker to someone who knew exactly what she was doing from day one. So seeing them together, even briefly, creates this narrative that some people find irresistible. Two people who don't fit the traditional royal mold, potentially connected in ways nobody knew about. That's a story people want to dig into. The footage quality isn't even great, it's a bit grainy, clearly not professionally shot, but that almost makes it more believable, more authentic. If this was staged, you'd think it would look more polished. This looks like someone just happened to be filming at the right moment and caught something they probably weren't supposed to. And that raw quality is part of what makes it feel so significant to viewers.
Hard, you have to understand who said it. Sarah Ferguson is not an ordinary duchess. She's the royal.
Royal commentators started weighing in almost immediately. Some said it was being blown way out of proportion. Others admitted that, yeah, the optics aren't great, and it's understandable why people are raising eyebrows. But the lack of clarity just fuels more speculation. And the conversation, it's not dying down anytime soon. All right, so let's talk about why this clip hit so hard. It's not just because two royals were caught on camera together. It's because these two specific people come with a lot of baggage. And I mean a lot. Andrew's name has been tied to controversy for years now. We're talking about someone who's been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Someone whose reputation has been absolutely shredded in the public eye. He's basically become the royal family's biggest headache. The one member everyone wishes would just fade into the background and stay there. Here's the thing, Andrew used to be pretty prominent in royal circles. He had duties, appearances.
But the former prince will still get one last Christmas at a royal lodge with his eviction and permanent move.
The whole deal. But over time, his public image just completely collapsed. People stopped seeing him as just another prince and started seeing him as someone surrounded by uncomfortable questions and situations that nobody really wants to talk about at dinner parties. The scrutiny around him isn't new, it's been building for years, layer after layer of stories and associations that painted him in increasingly negative ways. And it's not like the family hasn't tried to distance themselves from him. There have been reports of him staying out of the spotlight, skipping major events, basically being kept at arm's length. But you can't just erase someone from the public consciousness, especially when they're part of one of the most famous families on the planet. So Andrew's still there, lurking in the background, and anytime his name comes up, it brings this cloud of negativity.
And it all starts with one moment, one detail so small, so ordinary that it would change everything Harry thought he knew.
With it. Now let's talk about Meghan. She's a whole different situation, but equally intense. From the moment she entered the royal scene, opinions were split right down the middle. Some people saw her as this breath of fresh air, a modern woman bringing new perspectives to an old institution. Others saw her as an outsider who didn't understand or respect the traditions she was marrying into. There was no in-between. You either loved her or you couldn't stand her. And both sides were incredibly vocal about it. The media had an absolute field day with her. Every outfit choice, every public appearance, every interview got picked apart and analyzed to death. She was called ambitious, calculated, someone who knew exactly what she wanted and went after it without apology. And depending on who you ask, that's either admirable or manipulative. Her critics painted her as someone playing a game.
One anymore. Harry felt his chest tighten. He knew he wasn't going to sleep until he understood what this meant. So he
using her relationship with Harry to elevate her own profile. Her supporters said she was just being herself in a family that demanded conformity. What made it worse was that Meghan didn't fit the traditional royal mold at all. She had a career before Harry, she was outspoken, she had her own opinions on things, and she wasn't afraid to share them. For some people, that was refreshing. For others, it showed she wasn't cut out for royal life. The debate never stopped, and honestly, it still hasn't. Even now, years later, people are still arguing about whether she was treated unfairly or whether she brought it on herself. And so when you take Andrew, who's got this massive cloud of controversy hanging over him, and you put him next to Meghan, who's already one of the most argued about figures in modern royal history, what do you get? Chaos. Pure, unfiltered chaos. Investigative journalists. And then there's Tom Bower, a man so feared across Britain's elite circles that because now you're not just dealing with one controversial figure, you're dealing with two, and people's imaginations go wild trying to figure out what it means. The internet loves a mystery, and this clip gave them exactly that. It's like throwing chum in the water and watching the sharks circle. Everyone wants to know what the connection is, if there even is one. Are we talking about two people who just happened to be at the same event and exchanged pleasantries? Or is there something deeper, some kind of relationship or interaction that nobody knew about until now? And here's what makes it content gold. Both of them are already so divisive that any connection between them automatically becomes a story. It doesn't even matter if the clip shows them discussing the weather. The mere fact that they're in the same frame talking to each other is enough to get people spinning theories and digging through old photos and event schedules.
This joins us now in her first U.S. interview since her interview with Prince Andrew, which aired Saturday. Emily, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Trying to piece together a narrative. Royal watchers who've been following this family for decades say they've never seen anything quite like the reaction to this footage. It hit every sweet spot, controversy, mystery, two polarizing figures, and zero clarity about what's actually going on. That's the perfect recipe for a story that doesn't just trend for a day and disappear. This is the kind of thing that sticks around, that people keep coming back to, that spawns countless think pieces and YouTube videos and podcast episodes, because at the end of the day, people are fascinated by the royals, especially the ones who don't play by the rules. And when two rule breakers end up in the same clip, yeah, that's going to get attention, lots of it. Now here's where things get interesting. Meghan didn't exactly stumble into the royal family by accident, millions of times. But this wasn't some random media personality seeking attention. This was Tom Bower. There's this whole narrative around how she entered Harry's world, and depending on who you talk to, it's either a fairy tale romance or a carefully calculated move. The truth? Probably somewhere in the middle, but people love picking sides on this one. Listen, before Meghan ever walked down that aisle, she was already making waves. She wasn't some sheltered person who had no idea what she was getting into. She was a working actress with her own career, her own life in Hollywood, her own social circle. She'd been in the public eye before, just on a completely different scale. So when she started dating Harry, she already understood how media worked, how public perception could make or break you, and how to navigate attention. But what really gets people talking is how intentional her whole approach seemed. Insiders who've watched the royal family for years say that Meghan came in with a level of awareness that was pretty uncommon.
Oh, hello. Thank goodness you're here. Come in, grab a seat. I've had to put the kettle on twice. My first
Most people who marry into the family have some learning curve, some adjustment period where they're figuring out the rules and traditions. Meghan, she seemed to have done her homework beforehand. She understood the hierarchy, knew who the key players were, and had a sense of how things operated behind the scenes. Get this, there are stories about how she'd apparently learned about royal protocol, studied past interviews with family members, and even looked into how previous outsiders had been received by the public. Whether that's true or just speculation doesn't really matter at this point, because the perception stuck. She became known as someone who approached her relationship with Harry almost like a project, mapping out what needed to happen and how to position herself within this incredibly complex institution. And that's where opinions really split. Some people found that smart and impressive.
Hidden beneath palace protocol and polite smiles lies a connection no one saw coming. Explosive new receipts have surfaced.
She was taking her new role seriously, preparing herself for what was obviously going to be a massive life change. She wasn't going in blind. She was being strategic about integration into one of the most scrutinized families on Earth. That takes intelligence and foresight, right? But others saw it differently. To them, it looked manipulative, like she was gaming the system, using Harry as a stepping stone to elevate her own profile and gain access to power and influence she'd never have otherwise. The Hollywood background didn't help her case with critics either. She came from an industry built on image management, networking, and knowing how to work a room. Those skills are valuable in entertainment. But when you bring them into the royal family, it can come across as inauthentic. People started questioning whether her public persona was genuine or just another performance. Every charitable appearance, every interview, every carefully worded statement got analyzed.
But this was essentially a man who was engaging with every single question that we put to him.
Through this lens of, is she being real or is this all calculated? Here's what makes it even more complicated. Meghan didn't follow the traditional playbook that other royals had used. Usually when someone marries in, they're expected to take a back seat for a while, observe, learn the ropes quietly, and then gradually step into more prominent roles. Meghan came in hot. She had opinions, she wasn't shy about expressing them, and she seemed determined to make changes rather than just adapting to what already existed. That rubbed some people the wrong way, but it also earned her fans who appreciated that she wasn't willing to just be a silent, smiling figure in the background. The whole thing created this narrative that Meghan had been planning her royal life long before anyone realized. That maybe she'd been networking in circles where she might encounter royals, attending events where paths could cross, making connections that would eventually lead her to Harry.
Poise and ambition. She wasn't just auditioning for roles on screen. She was auditioning for a place among the world's most powerful.
It sounds conspiratorial when you say it out loud, but that's genuinely what some people believe. And once that narrative took hold, every interaction she'd ever had got re-examined through that filter. What's wild is that even her supporters don't necessarily deny that she was strategic. They just frame it differently. They'll say she was smart, prepared, and unwilling to be steamrolled by an outdated system. That she saw problems with how things were done and wanted to bring fresh perspectives. That being deliberate about your approach to a major life change isn't manipulative, it's just common sense. But then you've got the critics who point to everything she did and say, see, this was all planned from the start. They'll bring up old interviews where she mentioned the royal family, social media posts from years ago, connections she had before Harry.
Every story, every promise, every piece of trust suddenly feels like it's built on sand. And according to people,
and use it all as fuel for their theory that she'd been angling for this position long before the relationship became public. The reality is probably way less dramatic than either side wants to admit. But when it comes to public opinion, perception matters more than facts. And the perception that Meghan entered the royal family with a game plan, whether accurate or not, has stuck with her ever since. So when footage surfaces of her talking to Andrew, it's not just seen as a random interaction. It gets filtered through this existing narrative of Meghan as someone who knew all the players, understood the landscape, and was building relationships that would serve her later. So the million-dollar question everyone's asking is, when exactly did this interaction take place? Was this before Meghan got together with Harry, or was it after they'd already started dating? Because here's the thing.
The kind that makes your heart grab your throat. Those who witnessed his reaction say Harry went still. Absolutely.
The timing completely changes the story depending on which scenario we're talking about. If this was before Harry, it opens up a whole can of worms about how much Meghan knew about the royal family before she became part of it. If it was after, well, that raises different questions about why she'd be chatting with Andrew at all. The internet went into full detective mode the second this footage dropped. People started digging through archives, scrolling through old photos from royal events, cross-referencing guest lists from charity galas and public appearances. Royal watchers who've been following this family for decades pulled out their calendars and started mapping out every event where both Meghan and Andrew could have possibly been in the same room. It's become this massive crowdsourced search with everyone trying to pinpoint the exact moment this interaction took place.
Can you imagine what it's like for someone who is hated by every single person in the world to feel constantly?
What makes it tricky is that the clip itself doesn't have any obvious markers. There's no date stamp, no clear indicators of what event this was or what year we're looking at. People have been analyzing everything from the clothing choices to the background setting, trying to find clues. Was this indoors or outdoors? What season does it look like? Are there any recognizable faces in the background that could help place the timing? Every frame has been screenshotted, zoomed in on, enhanced, and debated across multiple platforms. And listen, some of these theories get pretty elaborate. There are threads on social media where people have created entire timelines of Meghan's life, marking every public event she attended, every trip she took, every photo that exists of her from the years before she married Harry.
Markle and Prince Andrew. Two names you would hardly expect to hear in the same sentence, but that's exactly where this story begins.
They're trying to find gaps where she could have been at a royal function without it being widely known. Because if she met Andrew before Harry, that changes the narrative from actress falls in love with Prince to actress who already had connections to royal circles ends up with Prince. Body language experts have gotten in on this too, analyzing every gesture and expression in the clip. They're looking at posture, at how comfortable both of them seem, at whether this looks like a first meeting or a conversation between people who've talked before. Some claim Andrew looks relaxed, like he's chatting with someone familiar. Others say Meghan's body language suggests she's being polite but distant. The interpretations are all over the place, which just adds more fuel to the speculation fire.
With a meeting that nobody was supposed to know about. September 2013, Toronto, Canada. Meghan Markle was living there.
Royal event photographers have been going through their own archives, trying to find anything that might connect to this footage. There are reportedly thousands of photos from various functions over the years that never made it to publication, background shots where random conversations are happening that nobody paid attention to at the time. Now people are wondering if this clip came from one of those moments, something that was captured but never seemed important until now. The question of timing matters for another reason too. If Meghan knew Andrew before getting involved with Harry, it suggests a level of familiarity with the royal landscape that most people didn't realize she had. It feeds into that narrative we talked about earlier about her being someone who understood the game she was entering. Critics would have a field day with that information, using it to support their claims that she'd been planning her royal entrance for longer than anyone knew.
Harry, by contrast, was reportedly devastated, caught between anger and exhaustion as he watched yet another wave of scrutiny crest toward their—
But then there's the flip side. If this happened after she was already with Harry, why would she be having what looks like a friendly chat with Andrew? By that point, his reputation was already pretty damaged, and most people in the family were reportedly keeping their distance. So why would Meghan, who was still trying to establish herself and win over the public, be caught on camera having a conversation with arguably the most controversial member of the family? Neither timeline really works in her favor, which is probably why people are so obsessed with figuring it out. If it's before Harry, it looks calculated. If it's after, it looks like poor judgment. And without any solid information about when this actually happened, everyone just fills in the blanks with whatever narrative fits their existing opinions about Meghan. The palace hasn't said anything, which isn't surprising. They rarely comment on speculation.
celebrity, monarchy, fame addiction, generational trauma, and public expectation, and the world could not look away.
Especially when there's no clear answer they can give that won't create more problems. So we're all just left guessing, piecing together fragments of information and hoping someone comes forward with context that actually explains what we're seeing. But until that happens, when this actually happened remains one of the biggest mysteries surrounding this whole situation. And people aren't going to stop trying to solve it anytime soon. All right, so let's talk about the absolute chaos happening in the comment sections and social media feeds right now. Because this clip has basically split the internet right down the middle, and both sides are going hard with their takes. You've got people who are absolutely convinced this means something significant. And then you've got others who think everyone's losing their minds over nothing. There's no middle ground here. It's all or nothing. And the arguments are getting pretty heated.
Whatever he wished, someone would ask him about. He grew up surrounded by servants, yet rarely by
On one side, you've got the people who see this as calculated networking. They're looking at this footage and saying, see, this proves Meghan was working her way into royal circles way before anyone realized. They're convinced this wasn't just some random run-in at a party. To them, this is someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Making connections, getting familiar with the right people, laying groundwork for what would eventually become her entry into the family. They're treating this clip like it's the missing puzzle piece that explains everything. And these folks aren't being quiet about it either. They're creating threads, breaking down every possible scenario, pointing out how strategic it would have been for Meghan to get to know different family members before things got serious with Harry. They're saying she was smart enough to understand that building relationships across the family, even with controversial members, could be useful down the line. To them, this isn't scandalous.
And silence in the royal world? That's when you know the walls are shaking. As the speculation escalated, media outlets began digging into...
It's just proof that she played the game better than anyone gave her credit for. Then you've got the complete opposite reaction. These are the people rolling their eyes at all the conspiracy theories, saying everyone needs to calm down because this is literally just two people having a chat at what was probably a crowded event. They're pointing out that royals attend dozens of functions every year where they interact with hundreds of people, and not every interaction means something deep. Sometimes people just chat because they're standing next to each other at a party. That's it. Nothing sinister, nothing calculated, just normal human behavior blown completely out of proportion by people who want drama. This group's arguing that the internet's obsession with finding hidden meanings in everything is getting ridiculous. They're like, you really think Meghan was plotting her way into the family by talking to Andrew?
Every commentator had a theory. Every YouTuber had a 20-minute breakdown video.
Conflict, a series dedicated to dissecting the most riveting royal scandals in history.
Come on. They see it as people projecting their existing opinions onto an innocent moment, taking something mundane and turning it into this massive conspiracy because it fits the narrative they already believe about her. But here's what's interesting. Both sides are using the exact same clip to support completely different stories. The people who think it's planned point to body language, to how comfortable they both seem, to the length of the conversation. The people who think it's nothing point to those exact same things and say, yeah, because that's what polite conversation looks like. Same footage, completely different interpretations, and neither side's budging an inch. The memes, though, they're absolutely everywhere. People are having a field day with this. You've got mashups with dramatic music, fake subtitles putting words in their mouths, side-by-side comparisons with other controversial royal moments.
She's being called out as she tried to brand the downgrade by Netflix as a sign of strength, and experts have been coming in.
TikTok's flooded with creators doing their best British accents and acting out imagined scenarios of what might have been said. Some of it's funny, some of it's mean, but all of it's getting millions of views because people can't get enough of this story. And then there's this whole two royal outsiders narrative that's taken over. People are framing Meghan and Andrew as these parallel figures who both ended up on the wrong side of public opinion, both controversial in their own ways, both operating outside the traditional royal boundaries. Some are romanticizing it, treating them like misunderstood rebels who never fit the mold. Others are using it to paint them both negatively, lumping them together as problems the families had to deal with. What's wild is how this narrative's bringing together people who normally wouldn't agree on anything. You've got Meghan critics and Andrew critics finding common ground.
Nervous about a trip and believes that mending fences with Princess of Wales would help. She's desperate to get ahead of the narrative. She knows getting
Both pointing to this clip as validation of their views. Meanwhile, people who usually defend Meghan are having to figure out how to explain away an interaction with someone whose reputation is so damaged. It's created these weird alliances and unexpected partnerships in the comment sections. Royal fan accounts are at war with each other. Supporter accounts are defending Meghan to the death, saying this means nothing and people need to stop dragging her. Anti-Meghan accounts are treating this like Christmas morning, finally having something new to talk about after months of the same old arguments. The blocks and unfollows are flying, friendships are ending over interpretations of a 30-second clip, and everyone's acting like this is the most important thing happening in the world right now. The theories just keep getting more elaborate too. People are connecting dots that probably don't need connecting, building these complex webs of who knew who and when, creating timelines that would make a theory board look simple.
Talk now.
Because there is no good time to talk.
And the more people engage, the more the algorithms push it, which means even more people see it and jump into the conversation. It's this self-perpetuating cycle of speculation and debate that shows no signs of slowing down. So while all this chaos is happening online, what's actually going on with Meghan and Harry? Because you know they're aware of this. There's no way they're not seeing the headlines, the trending hashtags, the endless speculation. And according to people close to the situation, Harry's not exactly thrilled about any of it. He's reportedly frustrated, concerned about how this is being spun, and doing what he always does when Meghan's under fire, going into protective mode. Harry's been through this cycle so many times at this point. Every few months, something pops up that puts Meghan back in the spotlight for reasons neither of them want.
Narcissist who cannot get enough of herself.
Breaking news is swirling in royal circles tonight as whispers of a previously...
And each time, he's got to watch as the internet tears apart his wife, dissects her past, questions her motives, and turns everything into some grand conspiracy. That takes a toll, you know? It's not just about defending her publicly, it's about dealing with the constant stress of knowing that no matter what they do, someone's going to find a way to twist it into something negative. The couple's whole thing for the past few years has been about carving out independence, building their own brand, separate from the royal family drama. They've done interviews, started projects, worked on initiatives that matter to them, all while trying to control their own narrative for once. They moved across the world partly to escape this exact kind of scrutiny. So when a clip like this drops and suddenly they're right back in the middle of royal gossip and speculation, it's gotta be exhausting. What makes it harder is that Meghan can't really win here.
Ferguson, the Duchess of York, leaned across the table and said something that made everyone freeze. Let's just say Meghan...
If she addresses it directly, she's giving the story more oxygen and keeping it alive longer. If she ignores it completely, people say she's dodging questions or hiding something. There's no good move, which is probably why sources say she's staying quiet, but definitely paying attention to how this is playing out. She's not panicking, but she's also not pretending it's not happening. Insiders suggest that Meghan's approach right now is basically managing the situation without making it obvious that's what she's doing. She's continuing with her regular schedule, showing up for her commitments, posting on social media like everything's normal. The strategy seems to be acting like this isn't rattling her. even if privately she's probably annoyed that a random clip from who knows when is suddenly dominating conversations about her again. And here's the thing, Meghan's dealt with worse. She's been through years of media attacks, public criticism,
social media and royal commentators into overdrive. Already, hashtags like hashtag Meghan and Andrew,
family drama played out in tabloids, and constant questioning of everything she does. A clip of her talking to Andrew is bad optics, sure, but it's not like it's the worst thing that's been thrown at her. She's developed a pretty thick skin at this point, learned how to navigate the storm without completely losing it. But the challenge is that this footage doesn't just affect her, it affects Harry too. Their whole partnership is built on this united front, this idea that they're facing the world together. When something like this comes out, it puts pressure on both of them. Harry's got to balance supporting Meghan while also probably wondering privately how this is going to impact their various projects and public image. They've worked hard to rebrand themselves, and any connection to Andrew, no matter how innocent or old, threatens that.
powerful business moguls, politicians, and of course, the royals themselves. He's got a reputation for writing what everyone...
Friends of the couple say they're having a lot of private conversations about how to handle this. Not in a panicked, crisis mode way, but more like talking through their options. What's the best way to move forward? Do they address it at all? Do they let it blow over naturally? How do they make sure this doesn't derail the work they're actually trying to do? These are the questions they're apparently working through while everyone else is losing their minds online. The tricky part is that every move they make now gets filtered through this new lens. If Meghan does a charity appearance, people will be watching to see if she addresses the clip. If Harry does an interview, journalists will be itching to ask about it. Even their silence becomes a story, people analyzing what it means that they haven't said anything, whether that's intentional or just them refusing to engage with gossip. What's interesting is how this puts them right back into the royal drama they've been trying to escape.
Extraordinary people together. And that's the bit that I remember, is going to the dinner parties where...
They left the UK partly to get away from this constant cycle of controversy and media scrutiny. They wanted to build a life where their work mattered more than gossip about them. But this clip proves that you can't really outrun your past, especially when you're connected to one of the most famous families in the world. Something can pop up from years ago, and suddenly you're explaining yourself all over again. Sources say both Meghan and Harry are focused on staying calm and not letting this derail their plans. They've got projects in the works, commitments they've made, and a life they're trying to build outside of royal drama. But it's hard to ignore when millions of people are talking about you, creating theories and treating a brief interaction like it's some major revelation about who you are. The reality is, they're probably going to ride this out like they've ridden out everything else. Stay quiet, keep working, and hope that eventually people move on to the next story.
At first, the prince reportedly laughed, thinking it was another wild rumor. But as Bauer continued showing photos and timelines, the laughter...
But the fact that they have to keep doing this, keep defending themselves against theories and old footage and conspiracy theories, shows just how exhausting it must be to be them right now. So here's why this story has legs and isn't disappearing anytime soon. It's not just about one clip or one moment. It's about everything this footage represents, all the questions it raises, and how perfectly it feeds into existing narratives that people have been building around both Meghan and Andrew for years. This isn't going to be a one-week news cycle and then fade away. This is the kind of thing that sticks around, that people keep coming back to, that gets referenced months from now when something new pops up. The biggest reason this won't die down is because both of these people are already surrounded by so much controversy.
Unlike every other royal birth before them, there were no cheerful photos outside the hospital, no doctors giving updates, no trace...
Andrew's been a lightning rod for years, his name attached to uncomfortable stories and situations that have completely tanked his public image. Meghan's become equally divisive, loved by some, absolutely despised by others, with very few people sitting on the fence about her. When you combine two figures who individually generate this much attention and debate, you get something that's basically designed to go viral and stay viral. People are absolutely obsessed with the idea of royal secrets. There's this fascination with what happens behind closed doors, the relationships and conversations that the public doesn't usually see. The royal family's whole image is built on maintaining mystery and control over their narrative. They decide what gets photographed, what gets announced, what the public gets to know about.
Protocol was ignored, or the story was never meant to be medically believable in the first place. What began as a fairy tale birth.
So, when something slips through the cracks, when footage surfaces that wasn't meant to be seen, or at least wasn't meant to be analyzed this closely, people lose their minds because it feels like they're getting a peek behind the curtain. And listen, it doesn't even matter if what's behind that curtain is interesting or not. The mere fact that it exists, that there's something the family didn't control or approve, makes it feel significant. People start wondering what else they don't know, what other interactions happened that weren't documented, what relationships exist that nobody talks about publicly. One clip opens the door to endless speculation about everything else that might be hidden. Here's what makes it stick even more. Innocent interactions get blown up into massive stories when you're dealing with the royals, especially these royals. If this was footage of literally anyone else having a conversation at an event, nobody would care.
According to sources, this is where the first version of Meghan's network took form, the one that existed off paper, away from headlines, and long.
But because it's Meghan and Andrew, because both of them come with baggage and complicated public images, suddenly a simple chat becomes this huge thing that everyone needs to analyze and debate and create theories about. The royal family lives and dies by how they're seen publicly. Their whole existence in the modern world is about maintaining an image that people respect or at least find interesting enough to care about. Every scandal gets people talking. Every bit of gossip adds another layer to how the family's viewed. So when two of the most talked about members are caught on camera together, it becomes more than just gossip. It becomes another piece in this ongoing story about how the family's public image keeps shifting. What really keeps this alive, though, is how one brief moment can genuinely change stories for months.
Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Members of Parliament have announced that they will now be looking into the Tennessee agreements for.
Before this clip, people had their settled opinions about Meghan. They either supported her or didn't, and most people weren't really thinking about her connection to other family members besides Harry. Now suddenly everyone's reassessing, going back through timelines, looking at her entry into the family through a different lens. That's powerful. That's why this footage matters beyond just being a viral moment. Royal commentators have been talking for days about how this changes perceptions. It adds complexity to Meghan's story that wasn't there before, or at least wasn't acknowledged before. It raises questions about how much she knew, who she knew, what relationships existed before the public was aware of them. And those questions don't have easy answers, which means people can debate them endlessly without ever reaching a conclusion.
We're not talking about a tweet or a Reddit theory or some blurry photo analyzed by armchair detectives. We're talking.
The algorithms love this stuff too. Every platform's pushing content about this clip because the engagement's insane. When people engage, when they comment and share and argue in the replies, the platforms show it to more people, which generates more engagement, which keeps the cycle going. It's self-sustaining at this point. Content creators know that anything related to Meghan or Andrew gets views, so they keep making videos, keep posting theories, keep the conversation alive because it's profitable to do so. And honestly, people just love drama, especially royal drama. There's something about watching wealthy, privileged, famous people deal with controversy that's endlessly entertaining to regular folks. It's like a real-life soap opera that never ends, with new episodes dropping randomly whenever something like this clip surfaces.
Single one, and it's driving them nuts.
Yeah. Well, this is at Sandringham, a weekend shooting party, which is quite normal.
As long as people are entertained, as long as there are questions without answers, as long as the algorithms keep pushing this content to millions of screens, this story's going to stick around. The clip's already cemented itself as one of those moments that gets brought up every time either Meghan or Andrew makes headlines for anything else. It's become part of their permanent record, another layer in the complicated public perception of who they are and what they represent. And that right there is why this isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So, where does all this leave us? We've got a clip that nobody saw coming, two of the most talked about royals caught on camera together, and an internet that's completely divided on what it all means. Some people are convinced this shows Meghan was networking her way into the family.
Is quiet. The Spotify deal is gone. The brand collaborations scattered, inconsistent, and fading.
Long before anyone realized. Others think it's just a random interaction that's been blown completely out of proportion. And honestly, we'll probably never know for sure which version is closer to the truth. What we do know is that this footage has already changed the conversation around Meghan's royal story. Before this surfaced, people had their settled opinions about who she is and how she got where she is. Now there's this new layer, this question mark hanging over her early connections to the family. It might not change anyone's fundamental views about her, but it definitely adds complexity to a story that was already pretty complicated. The timing question still bugs everyone. Was this before Harry or after? Did Meghan know Andrew casually, or was this a one-time thing? The fact that we can't answer these questions with any certainty is exactly why people keep talking about it.
Between the lines. But now, with faces from the past resurfacing, the numbers have started to betray her. When the first photo leaked,
mystery breeds speculation, and debate keeps stories alive. As long as there are gaps, people are going to fill them in with whatever fits their existing beliefs. Here's the reality, though. Whether this clip shows something meaningful or absolutely nothing at all, it's already done its job. It sparked debates, created theories, dominated social media for days, and added another chapter to the ongoing saga of Meghan and the royal family. That's the thing about modern royalty. One moment caught on camera can generate weeks of conversation, analysis, and wild guessing about what it all means. For Meghan and Harry, this is probably just another storm to weather. They've dealt with worse, and they'll deal with this too. For Andrew, it's yet another reminder that his past keeps following him around no matter how much time passes. And for everyone watching, it's another episode in the never-ending drama that is royal life in the spotlight. So what do you think? Was this just two people having a casual chat at some event, or is there more to the story than we're seeing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're as hooked on this whole saga as millions of others, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because something tells me this isn't the last time we'll be talking about unexpected royal connections. Thanks for watching.